Welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. This podcast is designed to support and empower you through postpartum. Whether you're expecting, in the early postpartum days, or beyond, this space is for you. I'm your host, Madison Fugere, a dedicated postpartum doula and pediatric sleep consultant, striving to help parents feel confident and supported in their parenting journey. Each week, I'm sharing practical tips and expert advice to help you navigate all the postpartum things with confidence. Well, as much confidence as you can. Let's embark on this journey together, making your parenthood as serene and supportive as possible. Katie is the founder and lead dietitian with Inspired Nutrition and Health. She runs her private practice out of Newburyport, Massachusetts, but also sees patients virtually, and she supports them through nutrition counseling. She has worked with tons of different families and people on an 80-20 approach when it comes to dieting, and today we're diving into postpartum dieting, nutrition, and all things that go along with it. She talks a lot about an all foods fit approach for weight loss while providing resources so that people can understand portions, timing of eating, content of food, and how that all plays a role in sustainable weight loss in order to undo that all or nothing idea that comes along with diet culture. So today we're going to dive into that some more, and she's going to give you some tips and tricks on what to do to help you feel like yourself after you have your little one. Thank you so much for joining me today, Katie. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We were just kind of like chit-chatting a little bit about, the amazing connections that we've been able to have thanks to saltwater doulas. So shout out to saltwater doulas. Um, but I'm
They're
excited
great.
to finally connect with you and be able to have you here on the space because I do think that, the dieting culture and weight loss and all of that kind of nutritional stuff postpartum is something that, a lot of folks end up really thinking about and struggling with after they have little ones. So I'm excited to have you here to kind of tell us a little bit more about tips and tricks and realms to go down that are safe and healthy ways to feel a little bit more like yourself after you have a baby. So I'm excited. But before we jump into that, do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and kind of like how you got into the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Katie, and I started my own private practice as a dietitian when I became a dietitian back in 2018. Before being a dietitian, I had worked in a weight loss clinic, helping people lose weight through various means. So, I've been kind of involved in this weight loss world for a long time. And then once I became a dietitian, I got more science and evidence-based information on really how to leverage wholesome foods and diet and lifestyle to start to see like real results.
Mhm.
I saw that there was a big need for actually utilizing wholesome foods for weight loss because a lot of my clients were coming to me saying, "Hey, I've tried Weight Watchers or Jen Craig or all
Right.
these other diets or keto or low carb." Like there was something
Yeah.
that was so extreme when they were first coming to me. So I said, there's a really big need for this, like eat real foods and lose weight so it can be maintainable and sustainable. So ever since then, I've had my private practice, Inspired Nutrition and Health, since 2018, seeing patients for weight loss, including postpartum weight loss too.
That's super cool. Yeah, I think that when you think about postpartum weight loss or just weight loss as a whole, right? We think about like, oh, you have to eat like these few things. So it's really cool and like really exciting to hear that you're able to support people in kind of, no, you can kind of eat everything still. We just have to talk about like how to do so, which I think is so important in kind of understanding like why you're doing what you're doing and not just doing it because someone says to, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like a lot of moms, after they go through just the challenges of pregnancy and then they're feeling different in their new bodies, it's easy to look for the quick fix, in that
Right.
case. You find something online, you jump into it, okay. But then you feel kind of crummy and low energy and maybe your milk supply suffers.
Right.
So yeah, I think having a dietitian in your back pocket to give you those tools and resources to know you can eat everything and you really should eat everything
Yeah,
to help you
absolutely.
balance. Yes.
Well, and I think you bring in a good part of like a good point of, the lactating side of things too, right? So if you are breastfeeding or pumping or trying to lactate and feed your baby, like that also brings in a lot of extra calories that you need and a lot of extra hydration that you need. And when we're so focused on this like quote unquote bounce back culture that is so hated by me and you, I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Oh
too,
yeah. Oh
um,
yeah.
it's really challenging because by then you're not giving yourself enough, which means that you're not giving your baby enough, which can really kind of mess with whatever feeding goals that you might have. So I think that that's like super, super important point to point out and to kind of bring up as well. So yeah, I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much more that goes into like a healthy, sustainable weight loss plan postpartum because your metabolism is different, your body's needs are different, your baby's needs are now present. So yeah, if we start to cut out carbs and all sugar, your body's going to crash and burn. It needs that balance. So that's where I really come
Absolutely.
into play with my patients to say, hey, let's give you a nice customized plan to know what to eat, how much to eat, how to balance like these sweets, treats, and fun foods with wholesome food. So you're not going to feel deprived. You're not going to hit that crash and burn, and you're going to feel really good, throughout
Yeah.
the
I
partum and
love
beyond.
that. Now, I'm assuming every single person that comes to you has different goals, has different, body weight, has different issues, has different things they want to work on, whatever it may be, right? So obviously information today that we're giving, I can only assume is going to be more generalized or may not be applicable for everybody listening. However, I would love to know a little bit about, what are your like, do you have a few things that you find yourself suggesting to most people, or kind of what is the stance on the few things and like whole foods and the balancing? Are there different, tips and tricks that you could kind of share with people that might be applicable to most listeners?
Yeah, definitely. My first tip here when trying to adopt more of this wholesome foods approach is give yourself access to convenience whole foods. So by that I mean like stock up on frozen veggies that are pre-cut, prepped. All you have to do is heat them up. Stock up on like the minute rice cups. Those are still whole food, but you don't have to spend like 45 minutes at the stove cooking it.
Yeah.
Even like pre-washed, pre-cut veggies, grilled, baked like chicken strips that are frozen. Those things you can grab in an instant and still
Yeah.
stay pretty healthy.
That's a really good point. I do think that that's so true because I find myself, even me, right? Like I stand at the fridge and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna eat? And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to cook this. I don't want to cook that. So then you go to the cabinet and you end up grabbing, whatever, processed something. So
Yeah.
by having something that's kind of already pre-made, I found myself the other day I had like hummus that I had gotten and I was like, oh, we ate like an entire ginormous cucumber and like half a container of hummus just because we were like, oh, sure, like that's ready. Like I can easily
Yeah,
grab that. So I feel
exactly.
like
It's
that's
so
such a good
easy.
point.
Yeah, yeah, make it easy. I think people get really overwhelmed, like, especially with a new baby. It's super easy to get lost in the mix of just new schedules, new routines. But when
Right.
we bring it back to basics, yeah, there are options out there that can still give you healthy, wholesome foods that are just taking a few steps out of the equation for you.
Absolutely. I even
Yeah.
had, and I'd love to know your input on this one. I've had some clients that have been gifted or have decided to order like meal delivery services. So like HelloFresh or
Mm.
like whatever, Blue Apron or whatever it's called, lots of different options and have ordered those as options for food when they've had their babies because it can be kind of like pre-made and all that. And then it also like kind of gives you some variety, right? So I
Yes.
thought that was so interesting. Would there be anything, or do you have any brands of those types of meal deliveries that you've worked with or that you might suggest? If not, totally fine. But I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, yeah, there are definitely a handful that out there that are really good, reputable companies. Like I know Factor 75, I've worked closely with some of my patients, Blue Apron, Green Chef.
Okay.
Those are all great. And the plans I typically recommend to stick really wholesome food and high protein is like the Mediterranean version. You get a lot of variety out of like whole grains, different types of fish, if you like seafood, lean meats. The Mediterranean plans are great just because they are so
Okay.
balanced and wholesome, and you're not leaning towards more of a diet because they still
Yeah.
offer those plans. You got to watch out. Some of them will say, here's our keto plan, here's our low carb plan.
Right.
You really don't want to lean towards that, if you're trying to maintain balance.
Absolutely. So what kind of
Yeah.
things are we looking for to have this balance that you're talking about? So we are talking about obviously not cutting anything out, right? But are we
Mhm.
trying to focus on more areas of food versus others? I know you've mentioned a lot of like vegetables or having a balance of grains and proteins and things like that. But are there specifics to that you suggest?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the basics of the plate builder for like main meals will always consist of a protein. So like some sort of a meat, if you eat meat here, we're looking at like chicken or beef or fish. Tofu can be a great protein substitute if you don't eat meat. So some sort of protein, always a vegetable, and then always a starch or a whole grain like root veggies or rice or quinoa, and a healthy fat involved here, like olive oil, avocado oil, avocados themselves. These healthy, wholesome fats absorb fat soluble nutrients. So having those main pieces to the plate are really important just to give you energy, maintain
Yep.
muscle mass. And then if we take it even a step further, if we're talking about milk production, postpartum,
Yeah.
foods that are high in galactagogues and phytoestrogens are like the powerhouse of stimulating the hormone called prolactin, which will stimulate breast milk production.
Oh,
So that's a
cool.
whole other world in itself, but it's really cool to explore, these food groups of phytoestrogens and galactagogues that can boost milk production and keep you on track.
Absolutely. Do you have like a couple of those types of foods off the top of your head? I think people would like love to hear what they should be eating for that kind of stuff too, right? Anything that increases milk production, everyone's
Totally.
doing.
I know it can sound so overwhelming, like using these big words. It's like, what does that even mean? The galactagogues, it's really going to come from a lot of like your wholesome grains. So oatmeal, for example,
Hmm.
you get a lot of galactagogues from an oatmeal dish. And then if we want to pair it up with a phytoestrogen, flaxseed. So if you add flaxseed to your oatmeal in the morning, that's like a powerhouse of
Okay.
stimulating prolactin. A few other ones, that can give you more galactagogues are going to be fennel. You're also looking at, again, more wholesome grains in general. And then the phytoestrogens could be a blend of like leafy greens, nuts and seeds, for the most part, just to keep it easy
Okay.
for yourself.
No, that's great. That's really great to know. I feel like people are so quick to be like, oh, I gotta order these lactation cookies, or I have to drink like all these body armors. And like, yes, hydration's important, right? And like,
Yeah.
whatever's easy and what works for you, but also like not getting into this whole marketing scheme. I'm so about there's so many products when it comes to postpartum and baby world that like are just marketed specifically towards those type of people, but you can get the same exact thing for
Yeah.
half the price if you're doing something else, right? So like
Absolutely.
you don't
Yeah.
need the lactation cookies, you just need oatmeal. There you go.
Yeah. Right. Most of those foods will just have like, yeah, the oats involved in the cookies. So yeah, I'd say, a little DIY at home, researching maybe some foods and high in galactagogues that that individual would really prefer. And then you can make a spin-off like recipe from that. There's a lot in
Absolutely.
those categories.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, cool. Now, when you are working with like postpartum parents about all of these things, obviously we want to keep like a steady, especially if you're breastfeeding, a steady income of income, but like I don't know if that's the right word to use, but a steady income of food and calories,
Yeah.
right? Intake. That's the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. There we go.
Intake.
Um,
Yeah.
um, now, do you have like or with your types of clients, are you guys talking about like calorie numbers or are you doing it more based off of like how you're feeling? Are you tending to have people like counting proteins or, what's the best way to do that? And how is the best way for somebody to know like what numbers they should be looking for if they're looking for numbers at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to steer away from numbers and figures because, again, it's just like another job you have to do on top of
Right.
everything else you have to do. So, what I like to start with is just developing a nice schedule. And I put that in loosely because I'm sure
Okay.
every day may look a little different, but
Right.
at least hitting your three main meals every single day. That's like a non negotiable. Wake up, have breakfast, lunch, dinner every single day.
Okay.
And then add in about 1 to 2 and maybe more, maybe 3 snacks a day. Depending on how long your day is and how hungry you're getting between meals, you definitely need a lot more calories coming in, especially if you are going to be breastfeeding. And
Right.
just for healthy recovery postpartum, I mean, we're wound healing, we're trying to get in protein for that, collagen for that. So the 3 meals a day plus 2 to maybe 3 snacks is
Yeah.
going to give you a really good foundation to just launch off of.
That's really great to know. Now, you've talked about like the division of a plate for a meal. When you're talking about snacks, what are the typical things that we're looking for to help keep that, sustainable, full feeling to get to the next meal, right? Because I
Mm.
feel like you said before, in, trying to get the things that are kind of pre-prepped is really helpful. But I think with snacks, especially, it's really easy to kind of just like grab things. I know I see people setting up little carts of like snacks and bars by their like feeding stations or by their nightstand, which is great. But what
Mhm.
are some options of things that people could put there that might help them to sustain a little bit longer when it comes to fullness?
Yes, I always recommend a protein and a fiber and a healthy starch source together. So, for example, nuts with fruit can be a great snack, and that's usually mostly finger foods, that I'll recommend here, like nuts with
Right.
fruit, or even like a small sandwich. You could make up like a little turkey sandwich, chicken sandwich, or even like peanut butter and banana sandwich, just to have as a nice carb boost. It has healthy fats, fiber, chicken salad. Things like that can give you high
Okay.
protein, plus like hard boiled eggs with fruit. So
Mm,
that combo of, can I get a protein? Can I get a fiber source? Bonus if I can grab that carbohydrate, like the whole
right.
grain breads. Yeah.
Okay, that's really great to know. Cool. Now, is there a specific time in which families can kind of start, looking at making sure they're making these healthy choices postpartum, especially like, yeah, I mean, I guess especially postpartum parents, right? When we're talking about being more mindful of these intakes, obviously those first few weeks are kind of like survival of the fittest, right? Like you just gotta
Mhm.
get through,
Yeah.
you're gonna get through. Now, is there time frame where it makes the most sense to kind of start being more mindful of what they're eating, or should they not be thinking about that for a certain amount of time? How does that kind of timeline work, or do you suggest it working?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's a skill, that we need to work at to really focus on healthy and sustainable eating. And I think this can even begin like during pregnancy,
Okay.
really opting for, and before, I guess as early as we can start, whether you're thinking about having kids or not, building that healthy, sustainable foundation for eating as soon as possible. So yeah, it could be pre-pregnancy, it could be during pregnancy. I know it could probably be a lot to juggle, postpartum, because I think you're
Right.
balancing more. So learning how to build your foundations of your protein, veg, healthy starch, healthy fat,
Yeah.
even before then, and then it will be that much easier to adopt postpartum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that it's one of those things that it's probably just like a good skill to have, right? Being able to balance those different things and how to know what to look for and what your body needs in order to be its best. Um, and then when it comes to that postpartum time of the actual losing weight, I know a lot of that obviously comes down to metabolism and it comes down to, sleep too. And there's a lot of factors that go into actual weight loss. But is there anything different that people should be doing? Like, say they already are kind of being mindful of what they're eating and they're, feeling good pregnancy or prenatally or whatever that may be. And now postpartum, there's still some baby weight that they would like to get rid of. They want to kind of feel like themselves again. Um, is there a healthy way or a manageable way to kind of get that weight loss process started? Does it look similar and just kind of like keeping up with what they were doing prenatally, or is there something different that should be happening if people are actively trying to kind of like lose that weight as well?
Yeah, postpartum and weight loss, again, making sure you have all the systems in place and the boxes checked of just sustaining your nutrition first and baby's nutrition, really making sure you have those lined up before you take this journey. If you are eating pretty healthy, right? You've got the wholesome foods down, but you're not really seeing the results. I would dial in a bit more to portion control too. People often forget portions can definitely make or break some of the progress. So balancing your plate in terms of your proper portions for that right amount of protein that you need, that right amount of starch, that right amount of veggies and fat. Portions can slip away from us a lot of times.
Right.
So portions can be individualized, just based on the person's like activity levels, metabolism needs. So I think that's something you'd work with your dietitian closely on. And then after that is just getting in some exercise when you are approved to begin moving. So your 8 to 10,000 steps, again, when you're ready to begin taking that on.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Ooh, sorry, I got weird feedback on my own end. No, that sounds great. I think that it can be so overwhelming for so many people. So to be able to kind of know where to start and like, when to start can be, I think, really beneficial to people as well. Are there any other tips or tricks that you tend to share with your postpartum families or prenatal even as well? Because I mean, we do get prenatal listeners as here, and I think they probably feel pretty beneficial from the same information you're giving.
Yeah, yeah. Looking at the whole systems approach, I mean, diet and nutrition does make up about 85 to 90% of our entire body composition. So assessing diet is obviously very important, but we want to look at the other things too, that can make up that extra 10 to 15%. So your activity, movement, stress, where's your stress levels? This can totally make or break not only just weight loss, but hormone production. So having
Absolutely.
really healthy stress management techniques in your back pocket, that's something I briefly touch on with my patients, but that's a whole nother world, that could be explored. That's really important. And then just basic hydration too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any hydration like suggestions for people I know, especially, nursing parents and breastfeeding parents? Oh my goodness, like hydration is so important because you can't create milk if you don't have any type of liquid to create milk
Yes.
out of, right? And
Mhm.
I know that sometimes people are like not big water fans. I have a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I have the water, I just forget to drink it because it's not interesting. Do you have any hydration suggestions for people?
Yeah, electrolytes are a good place to start if you don't like just basic water or, the flavor of it.
Yeah.
Electrolytes are so good. Plus, it deepens your hydration when you get these electrolytes in. Plus, you need a little more during this time.
Okay.
Pre-pregnancy, postpartum, and during pregnancy. Honestly, electrolytes are a win at all stages. So there's a lot of electrolytes out there. I would try to look for low sugar ones because a lot of them can be loaded with just unnecessary sugar. So you want one that is low sugar, optimal in sodium, and plus has other minerals like potassium and magnesium in it too.
Okay. No, that's great to know. Awesome.
Mhm.
Cool. Now, I know that you have some programs that you work with people for 12 weeks to kind of help them figure out, what works best for them. Do you want to walk everybody kind of through what that process might look like if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my signature program here for sustainable weight loss. If someone out there is looking for weight loss without the crash diets, the fads, without being deprived or taking that extreme approach, this is really for that person. So my 12-week approach includes using an 80-20 system for eating. So that includes like 80% of the time, we're focusing on wholesome foods like meats, fruits, veggies, nuts and seeds, whole grains, dairy. And then 20% of the time, you still have a place and space to have something fun. The cake, the pizza, the dessert, there's space for that.
Yeah.
So I help my patients to figure out what that looks like for them during this 12 weeks, starting with a 90-minute consultation. That's where we develop their customized nutrition plan, since everyone's going to look different based on what time they wake up, what time they go to bed, and everything in between. And then we follow up every 2 weeks for 45 minutes to talk about the changes they've been able to make, how they're feeling, what's working, what's not working, and then cover some topics of education along the way. One week may be catered towards portion control. The next week could be catered towards traveling and dining out and mindful
Mm,
eating and beverages. So there's a topic per week that we cover. So that way, at the end of 12 weeks, you have your entire toolkit built for sustainable weight loss that you get to refer back to even beyond the 12 weeks.
that's awesome. I love that you're using kind of like that education part of it, right? And being able to have topics that you're explaining people through, whether they're experiencing that in that moment or not. Because I do
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of it, like you said, with dieting comes I'm dieting and then I just go back to my normal life. But this sounds like it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more like integrate and you're like integrating it a lot more, right? Like
Yeah,
you're talking about how can you make this like something that's more sustainable? How can you make this something that's more, enjoyable so that you're not feeling like you need to go back to your quote unquote like old life of eating, right? And that's super
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's the toolkit that you can build and refer back to every time, time and again. And like you said, depending on what you're going through at that time, if you have a big trip coming up, you can refer back to that week on travel. So it's really cool.
That's
Yeah.
really amazing. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think that being able to share this information with people is going to be super helpful because I know there's so much information out there, especially when it comes to diet, but even more so when it comes to, that postpartum diet culture that can be, so scary to dive into because we want to make sure we're doing things healthy, right? And safely. So thank you for sharing those tips and tricks with everybody today. And hopefully some people will reach out. I've got Katie's information. There we go. I am so out of it today, y'all. Katie's information is in the show notes below, so you can check out her program and all of her social medias as well. And definitely let her know that I sent you. So thank you for joining me, Katie.
Thank you so much. It was so nice speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Postpartum Plan podcast. I hope that today's episode brought you support, relatability, and valuable insight. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review and share with any of your prenatal and postpartum friends and family. Your feedback helps us reach more parents seeking support. And if you're looking for additional resources, please feel free to connect via Instagram at Serene Moments Doula for constant information, tips, and tricks, or check out my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com. See you next week.